Hey guys, I'm out here on the river. I'm about to start getting ready to catch some bait for this afternoon's trip. And people have been asking me some questions about targeting catfish and actually looking for them on my sonar, down imaging and side imaging. So I figured today I'd just do a quick video on that. I'll run through my settings and show you how mine's currently set up right now. And now it may change depending on your body of water. You know, if your body of water has got a lot more silt or mud floating around, then you'll probably have to dial some stuff back. But right now we've got a little bit of debris in the water here in my river, and there's probably a 1.5 mile hour of current flowing right now. But for right now, I'm gonna start with sonar, and we'll work into down imaging, and then we'll get into side imaging at the end. And most of the questions I've had are actually related to side imaging. So let me get turned around right here and get on this channel edge and let you see my screen. All right, so before we get into sonar, let's have a look at some settings and how I've got mine set up right now. We'll just run through this real quick. I don't think I've changed anything in the alarms column and what's factory. Pan over to sonar. If you notice right here, my 2D display frequency, that's telling you what frequency you're running while in 2D sonar mode. So if you look right here at the bottom left hand corner of my screen, you can see I'm running 83 kilohertz. You see the same thing up here. This is a chirp model. I don't use chirp. We'll get into that again when we start looking at the sonar. You can look right here at my DI. Now I am running Mega chirp on that. I always run chirp and Mega on DI mode. And like I said, we'll get into all this. I just want to quickly cover this stuff. Currently I'm running 455 and side imaging. Surface clutter set to 1. You can turn that up, but you're going to see some more stuff starting to develop up here near the surface, more clutter. So I generally keep that between 3 and 1. 2D switchfire. 2D switchfire is a filter for your 2D sonar. So right now it's set to clear mode, and the unit's gonna try to filter out a lot of the stuff that it's that comes across the sonar beam. Trash, debris, leaves. It'll try to filter out some of that stuff. Switching this to max mode is unfiltered raw data. So you're gonna see everything on sonar. It doesn't matter if it's a speck of dust, it's going to show up. So I run mine in clear mode, and I've got my settings set for clear mode. Imaging switch wire, clear mode, max mode, same thing there. Max DI, I leave that on. Fish ID, turn that off. Fish ID sensitivity, it doesn't matter because we have it off in the setting above that. RTS window, that's just a window here that allows you to see what's happening in real time. A lot of guys that are jigging, vertical jigging, use this, but I leave that off. Structure ID, that's the bottom view structure ID. Now is what this is. Right now you can see the bottom of my sonar is red, but if I was to change this to white line, it's going to make this white instead of red, and sometimes that helps, especially when fish are sticking to the bottom, like a cold front day. Zoom width, you got narrow, medium, and wide. That has to do with your down imaging. I generally leave that set to narrow. 83 kilohertz sensitivity. Since we are in 83 kilohertz, we can play with this setting. You can either adjust this. This is sort of like your sensitivity level, your overall sensitivity. But I leave that at 0 just because I can change that in the quick setting, which we'll get to in just a minute. Depth lines, it's just depth increments here on the side. SI range lines is the same thing, but using side imaging. SI readouts. If I don't mention anything about it and just kind of skip over it, it's irrelevant, and it's not really an important setting. Noise filter. If you have a lot of noise and coming from other electronics in the boat, and your screen doesn't look the best, maybe you're getting a lot of interference, you can play with these settings right here to try to eliminate some of that. Max depth, I leave that set to auto. There is a lot of people that actually adjust this to the max depth of water they're fishing, but I've never noticed an advantage in that, so I just leave mine set to auto. Freshwater, that's my transducer that's connected. That's my Mega transducer. SI orientation is normal. My depth source is 2D element. I don't know what that is, so I can't help you there. Color bar is just your display of what's soft and harder hits. Red on this color palette is your hardest hit, and blue and green being your softest hits. Temperature graph, I leave that off. We're not going to talk about navigation today or chart. We won't talk about Humminbird charts or any kind of charts. Some additional settings that I have turned on. Let me get in here. If I can find it. Right here, your chirp configuration. See, right now my 2D chirp is off, my DI chirp is on, and my SI chirp is on. I never change those settings once they're in there. So that's the settings that I'm running for everything overall as a unit. Now, right now, I'm running a 10 sensitivity, a 20 contrast. Those two numbers are factory. That's what they come preset to from Humminbird. Upper range, this just takes away some of the stuff you see at the very top of the water. If I change that to 0, sometimes you'll see the bottom of the boat showing up right here from the transducer picking that up. So I just leave that set to 3. Lower range is the same thing as upper range, but it's how far it's looking down. Jigging mode, I don't vertical jig. Sometimes I will turn this on if I'm vertical drifting for catfish, but for the most part I leave it off. Chart speed is 4. Your chart speed is how fast you want to be moving while scanning. So a chart speed of 4, you want to be moving 4 miles an hour or as close to it as you can get. Your sonar color palette is just my color palette of choice. You can pick whatever you want. So now we'll go ahead and fire up the Yamaha and we'll get them moving. And I'm actually going to switch this over to my GPS so I can make sure I'm staying on this contour line, on this ledge line. I'm going to get the boat up to about 3.5, 4 mile an hour. And you'll get to see what my 2D looks like. And I may have to adjust the settings a little bit. Looks like we're getting a little bit of debris showing up. And you can filter out all this, or for the most part, and still have a very good image on your 2D. Alright, so for the most part it looks like it's clearing itself up. It's probably just some trash in the water back there. And you can see we're starting to see some fish showing up. A lot of people complain that Humminbirds don't show arches. As long as you got your unit set up right and your transducer's level, then they will show arch. And actually it looks like there might be some fish hugging tight at the bottom through here. We'll switch over to DI. And there's a few fish hanging out through here in these sticks. But we'll talk about DI in in just a minute. There's a lot of structure through here, so what you think might is a fish may not be a fish. See, if I didn't have down imaging, you might think that that's a big fish laying there on the bottom, but in reality it's a lot of logs, and you just can't see that on 2D sonar. So your best friends for the type of fishing we do is sonar and down imaging. That's, in my opinion, you at least need that to see what you're actually fishing. And you don't have to have a Mega unit. You can, you can get just the chirp model, or even a Gen 1 Humminbird that's a non-chirp. Yeah, the picture's not going to be as clear, and you're not going to be able to see as much detail, but it'll get you by for the most part. So, still riding through here. Let me get back on this channel line. Well, we're about to come into some rock, so the 2D might look a little crazy, but I'm hoping we can see some nice fish over here hanging off these rocks. You notice our water temp right now in Alabama has just hit the 80-degree mark, so the fish are definitely going on spawn, and fishing's gonna suck for about a month. But it's, I guess if you want to catch big fish, you got to let them be born eventually. So it's just that time of the year, just the off season. You can see a couple of smaller fish in the middle of the water column. Okay, now we're starting to get into the rock, and this is a very sharp ledge line. So most of the time, if you see a very sharp ledge, it's more than likely going to be rock. As mud doesn't really give you a sharp ledge. It's more of a gradual slope, and you can actually kind of see that on this side of the river. It's more of a gradual slope than a bunch of close contours here at the bottom. So this would be mud, and that would be rock. But you can see the 2D showing the fish. There's a full view of it. There's a nice little guy right there. I'd probably guesstimate him to be 20 pounds maybe. But just in case I don't see any big ones riding through right here, I do have a screenshot of some bigger fish on sonar that I can show you. So just keep that image in your head of what a 15 to 20 pound fish would look like, because I'm not really seeing a whole lot of bigger fish. There's a couple bigger ones. They're not monsters, but they're better than him for sure. But those still aren't monster fish. So let me show you some snapshots of what big fish do look like. So I'm going to go in here. That would be a big fish. And these are several other bigger fish laying directly on the bottom of the river. But you can notice the difference between that arch and the one we saw just now. So there's a big difference. Alright, so we've pretty much covered sonar. If you need to filter out any kind of junk on your screen, I'm going over some waves right now, so I don't want to mess with it while that's happening. But you see all of this blue cloud, you can adjust that out by coming in here, hitting menu, going up here to your sensitivity, and just dialing that back until you know, you're still getting a good arch definition, but you can get good color out of your fish without losing, you know, everything. So 8's about right. All right, I'm gonna turn around and we're gonna turn on this down imaging. I'm actually gonna run, probably just run DI only. Well, no, let's have sonar up there with it. All right, so let me get my down imaging settings fired up, and you're gonna have to adjust these settings every time you get on the water, because the water is different day to day. There's just no way around it. And what works for my eyes might not work for your eyes, but this is a general starting point of what I like to run. Okay, that's about right. Let me get turned around. I'll go ahead and put this thing back so we'll get the look at the fish as they come up on sonar and as they come up on down imaging, and see what they look like. Now you can start to see some of that rock that I was talking about coming up on down imaging. And again, you know, if you didn't have down imaging, you would think that's a big fish up here in these rocks, but in fact it's just a part of the rock itself. So in my opinion, it's very, very important to at least have down imaging on a depth finder. And remember to maintain your speed while scanning. You can see all the detail in the rock down here and all the shadows of all this. It's just incredible what Mega Imaging shows you. See, now here's a decent fish right here, hanging right off the back side of that rock. And how I know that's a fish is you can look over here on this down imaging and you can see that he's separated from the rock. There's nothing connecting that. So I know for 100% fact that's a fish hanging off the back side of those rocks. And it makes sense right now because we have a bit more current than we normally do. So he's probably relaxing and sitting in that calmer water that's just behind that rock, being blocked from the current. Now the reason I run Mega on my down imaging all the time is most of the time when I'm using down imaging, I'm trying to pick out structure from fish, and I'm trying to see fish hiding in structure. So that means I'm looking inside a log jam trying to spot fish inside of it. And the Mega Imaging does a lot better job than the 455 or the 800 kilohertz, which is the other two settings for down imaging. So let's go to down imaging only. I'll show you those two settings. Right now we're in Mega. You can tell by the frequency settings. So if I wanted to change that, I would go up here and hit this check mark, and that puts me in the 420 to 520 kilohertz, which is your lowest frequency setting in this unit. And this is what it would look like if you didn't have a Mega Imaging unit, or you had a Generation 1 Humminbird. Now you can still see the rock, but it's nowhere near as detailed as it was back there. So that kind of gives you an idea of what 455 looks like. We'll swap over to 800. So now we're in 790 to 850. I'll let that load up some new data on the screen so we can look at it. And you can start to see some of the definition in the logs and stuff we're coming into now. You can see some fish sitting up here. You can even see the shadow of this log down here. So it is a good bit better than the 455, but it's just not quite there of the Mega. We'll go ahead and turn on Mega again. So we're back in Mega mode. Let me see if I can't find some of these log jams that I'm talking about. You know, and still looking at it, you can kind of see the 455 back here, crappy. 800 is decent, and Mega is just so much more detail over the 800 kilohertz. It's just ridiculous. Now I'm not directly on top of the logs, but you can kind of see them off to the side, and you can see the level of detail and accuracy of all that. It's crazy. Alright, let's go through here and show you some of my settings for down imaging real quick. You saw me playing with the DI enhance that controls your sensitivity and your contrast. Sensitivity is exactly what it says. It's the sensitivity of the unit, and your contrast will darken up and lighten features on it to show better definition. So the higher this number goes, the darker everything gets, and the lower the number, the lighter everything gets. So you kind of have to play with those settings to get the detail that you want. And the sharpness setting, it's just like your TV at home. You don't want to run it too sharp, but you don't want it on the lowest set in the sky, because then you get a little bit of fuzzy picture. See, I turned it off right there, and I don't know if you can tell, but the picture got a little bit fuzzier. Turn it to low, and it just makes it a little bit crisper. And then if you turn it up too high, it's just way overexposed. So I like to run mine on low all the time. Upper range, lower range, we've already covered those in sonar. Chart speed, same thing. DI colors. Now you can play with these colors, and not everybody's the same. I like using color palette 4 for down imaging. It just works best for me, and I'm able to see the most detail out of down imaging with this color palette. But you can change your settings. I know a lot of people like blue, a lot of people like amber. Brown, this brown palette, really, I'm really fond of for down imaging. So let's flop over to side imaging, and I'm actually going to start off using the brown palette. Alright, let me get a couple things dialed in real quick. Alright, so right now we're running 400 kilohertz. This is the lowest setting this unit has for side imaging. And we're looking 100 foot left, 100 foot right. You can tell by the lines here. We're coming up into those log jams that we scanned earlier, or just a few minutes ago with down imaging. And I'm gonna go ahead and put this on Mega real quick just to show you the detail that you can get out of this. Now every time you change frequencies, you'll have to change your settings, because it gets darker and lighter, because mud absorbs sonar frequency, and the higher the frequency setting that you're in, which is the highest we're in right now, it's going to absorb more of that sonar, and it'll be less coming back to the unit. Let's go in here, turn the sensitivity up just a fuzz. We'll leave it right there. Now this is actually an underwater pipe, and you can see the couplings in it. Half of it's buried here, half of it's buried here. You can see mud that's washed up on it. And it's actually making like a little sand drift, almost like a snow drift, but just sand and mud. And you can even see the ripples in the bottom of the river of sand and mud. And there's a log jam coming up right now on our left. But mega imaging on SI, it really shows you detail. Let's see if I can go back in here to this other color palette and see if we can't see some fish on it better. Now this red palette I've just now started using, and it tends to show me fish better, at least for my eyes. Coming up on some stuff right now. You can see over here there's a fish sitting right there. You can see the shadow just behind him, and I'm still able to tell the difference between structure and fish. I'm getting a lot of boats come by me, so you're gonna see little ripples come up on the screen. But before I started running the red palette and was still able to see fish quite easily, even at a distance like I'm scanning right now, and you know, over 100 foot away. The further you look, the harder it's going to be to see those fish, because the resolution, the pixels of the head unit is going to be cut down, and the image or the fish you're going to be looking at on the side imaging is going to be smaller because he's further away. So let's turn this back to brown real quick. And in just a second, I'm going to bump this setting down to the 800 kilohertz setting. 800 and 455 I use a lot to find fish, especially when I'm scanning flats, shallow flats, and yeah, just pretty much anytime I'm actually looking for fish on side imaging, I'll use those settings a lot because they show me the fish a lot better than the higher frequency does. And again, like I said, the higher frequency absorbs more easily into objects. The lower frequency tends to bounce off stuff a lot easier. And that's what you want. You want frequencies to bounce back to you, so your head unit can pick those up. So especially if you're near rock or hard bottom, pebble bottom, definitely go with 455 or 800, because those sounds are gonna bounce back extremely well. And you know, even in mud bottom, you want to run those frequencies because they're gonna have less absorption into the mud. Running mega imaging in a really rocky bottom may just be so bright. See, if I go back to a brighter screen here, let's try a blue, or coming out of the rock now. A lot of times you would see so much white on the screen because it's sending those returns back so heavy from the hard bottom. But you'll just have to play with the settings and see what you like the best. If I'm looking at structure, I'm always using mega imaging. If I'm looking for fish, I'm using most of the time 800 kilohertz. So we'll go ahead and go back in here to my colors. We'll crank this to, let's go to 450 first. I'm gonna come around the inside of this bend. There's not a whole lot of rock over here, but there is a really shallow flat, and hopefully we can get the sonar to reach on the top of that to see some stuff. And you can kind of see the crazy lines on the left of the screen right above the depth, and that's from me having a turn coming into this bend. Alright, you can see a tree coming up on my left or on the right, and you can actually see the shadow from the tree that's standing off the bottom. There's another little log pile on the left. Now guys, like I said, this is 450 kilohertz. I mean, and you can still see, you know, really good detail with this stuff. And it's so impressive to me what these units can show. Now we're getting some waves off the ski boat, so everything's gonna look a little distorted. That's what I hate about this time of year. Alright, so now we're coming up onto this flat that's on the left, and you can see some rocks, not rock, but some logs laying here. I see some fish peppered out in here. Now we changed from Mega setting to a 450 setting, so we're going to go in here and readjust our settings again. So you can see there's a log here, there's a school of fish. It's kind of cloudy over there. You can see a fish laying right here. He's got a shadow behind him. Alright, so let's go in here to our 850s setting. We'll wait on some new data to load up from that. And you can see further with the 450 than you can the 800, looking at the two differences there. And like I said earlier, the higher frequencies gets absorbed, so it's being absorbed out here where the 455 wasn't. The 455 was returning to the head unit a lot better, but the 850 will show you more detail and more accuracy. The only reason I had time to make this video today is I'm actually waiting on Trevor. He lives about an hour and a half from me, around Birmingham, Alabama. So, and he's probably just now left his house. So it's gonna take him a little time to get here. And I'm just kind of piddling around till he does. I still gotta catch bait, so that'll be another job to do. Look at this concrete box right here. We've got some boat waves hitting me, so it's gonna look a little goofy kind of, but we can still see some fish, you know, peppered down in here in front of it. Right now we're looking at the bank at the SI. Let's cut down the SI range now that we're close to the bank. And you notice how that really looks hot on the screen. Now we can still see some fish in here, and there's a bunch of shadows all up under these little white specks, and all that's fish that's peppered in there. But you can kind of see what I was talking about earlier. If you were in an area that had a lot of rock, you would be getting a lot of hot returns. And that's what that white is. It's a hotter return. We got a lot of activity going on right out behind this point. I'm seeing a lot of fish, some structure in here. That's what that is. That's that point on them rocks over there, because it wraps back further away from the bank. And there's a lot of fish in here hiding off that point. Go back in here into the Mega setting one more time. And again, the screen gets darker. It's absorbed easier into objects. So be sure to adjust for that once you get enough data on the screen that you can actually see what you're doing. Coming into a lot of rock again. So let's run through this real quick one more time, see if I've missed anything that is going to be an important factor. Pick your color palette. It's best on your eyes, what you can see the best, and just play with these numbers right here. You know, if you don't like it, you can always reset it. And so I hope y'all enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something out of this, and I'll see y'all again shortly.